We just passed the National Defense Authorization Act this week, and we're going to dramatically increase spending to defend this country. Now, it's not finished yet. The whole Senate has to do it, but we've got to have the resources to defend this country. We have a lot of enemies right now.
The U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee passed next year's National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, on June 11th. 1 week earlier, the House Armed Services Committee also passed its own version on June 5th. Taiwan provisions this year in both bills include authorizing the Pentagon to pre-position weapons and munitions in Taiwan and calling for a formal review into delays of U.S. arms deliveries to Taiwan and to Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines as well. On top of all that, the Senate NDAA also renames the main U.S. security program with Taiwan, expanding it from a Taiwan-only initiative to a First Island Chain Security Cooperation Initiative, adding the Philippines as a new beneficiary and extending the program through 2032. But here is the tension. Congress is doing all of this at the same time that the administration is sitting on the $14 billion arms package it approved for Taiwan back in January. The U.S. Congress is pushing one way, the White House seems to be pulling another. So for Taiwan, does any of these actually make a difference? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks, everybody. I'm Wenty Song. With me to discuss these are Ronan Fu, Assistant Research Fellow for Political Science at Academia Sinica; Adam Ma, Assistant Professor in International Affairs at Tamkang University. Adam, Ronan, as always, thank you both for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Hi.
All right, Ronan, let me start with you for the first question. This congressional authorization and statement of support for Taiwan, how mandatory are they or how optional are they? I mean, as we see earlier, Congress signaling one way, White House seems to be slightly more ambivalent. How mandatory are these things?
Yeah, so sadly for Taiwan, the honest answer is that this legislation, they only build the architecture, but they can raise the political cost of doing nothing. But it does not force the president or the executive again to actually move a single weapon. So basically, it's like, I suggest that what you can do under this condition, you're freely to do it, but only under premise that you want to do it, right? So that part of the willingness still hinges on, Donald Trump, and his national security advisor. So basically, most of the bill, in the end of the day, is authorization, not funding in place, right? So that requires, the Trump administration wanting to do it, right? So right now, actually, legislation basically just showing the green light, but you are in the driver's seat. You have to make sure that you actually want to move forward.
So when they see the green light and the administration decide not to follow through, would there be any actual cost to the administration?
Unfortunately, no real cost will be incurred on Trump. But now we're trying to make sense some potential political risk of inaction. Maybe incur, but it's like potentially there might be some cost, but the actual cost basically doesn't really exist. Even though the deliveries can still be stuck, if for example, the Trump administration doesn't really want to move forward. But the legislation actually still help because it helped to create some future accountability. So we cannot expect something to happen like overnight. But if basically some political momentum will be there in support of Taiwan, then the cost of inaction will also increase. So that is what Taiwan will hope for.
All right, so shadow of the future. Let's hope it plays in Taiwan's favor. Adam, let me come to you for my next question, which is we talk about renaming that U.S.-Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative. Now they're changing it to First Island Chain Security Cooperation Initiative. So you changed that name from Taiwan to First Island Chain as a whole. How do you read it? Is it putting Taiwan at the center, or is it kind of like diluting Taiwan into the broader region? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah. Actually, I think according to national security strategy of the U.S., they still keep Taiwan as a main role in First Island Chain. So don't worry about that. But changing the name itself, for me, that is a little bit good for Taiwan. Because if the U.S. emphasizes too much security cooperation with Taiwan, we may get a problem with China because China will feel very angry and they may increase their threat to Taiwan. So if U.S. they change the name, even just change the name to emphasize the old first island chains, and that means the spotlight is not only on Taiwan, right? We have a row of spotlight, that is good. And second, I think if U.S. change their mind from Taiwan to a group or a team, that is also better for us. That means the neighbor countries like Philippines, like Japan, like Korea will be involved in Taiwan Strait issue. So that may make us actually more secure because we have a bigger group. So for me, the meaning, just change the name from Taiwan to First Island chain, I think that is still very good for us.
All right, sounds like an opportunity to find, I guess, safety in numbers. Maybe do more, or at least do just as much, but speak a little bit less when it comes to provocation management or perceived provocation management.
Yeah.
So that's what the U.S. Congress has been doing for Taiwan. Let's look at the other side of the equation here, which is that on June 4th, the same week that the NDAA was moving through committee in U.S. Congress, the U.S. Congressional Research Service, that is the Congress think tank, updated its report on Taiwan's defense and military readiness. This is a document that members of Congress actually read when they vote on Taiwan-related legislation, and this year's update is quite candid. The report notes that Taiwan's $25 billion US special defense budget passed by Taiwan's legislature back in May is about 38% below what Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te's cabinet had originally asked for. The report also flags three ongoing concerns, namely Taiwan's difficulties in military recruitment and retention, insufficient civil defense preparedness among the general public, and vulnerability in critical infrastructure, including energy, communications, and water supply, things that could be disrupted in a conflict or a blockade scenario. And even on the political side, the CRS report also was being pretty blunt. It says that the divide between Taiwan's Lai administration and the opposition-controlled legislature has raised questions in Washington about whether Taiwan can adequately fund its own defenses. In other words, America's own analysts are saying that Taiwan domestic politics are potentially becoming a strategic credibility concern for international friends of Taiwan as well. So Roland, let me come back to you for my next question, which is that CRS report from Congressional think tank. Do you see it being a relatively accurate picture of where Taiwan is at, or is it actually underselling some of the progress that Taiwan has been making more recently?
Yeah, sadly, I think it is accurate. So that's exactly the reason why, if feels uncomfortable. And let me lay out the reason why. So the three gaps, this report points to: number one, recruitment; number two, civil defense; number three, infrastructure. All three are, real serious questions or topics that Taiwan needs to deal with. So Taiwan has been making some progress, but it's far cry from perfection or like sufficiently enough. So I think it is accurate to point out the real issues, but Wendy, I also want to basically make a point that it basically undersells some of the real progress that Taiwan has been trying to make. Okay, so basically, number one, yes, the Lai administration fought really hard. So eventually, the special budget passed, albeit basically, a large portion got cut. True, but the bill got passed. Number one. Number two, President Lai made a very serious commitment to increase the military expenditure, from in the past 2-something percentage points of GDP to 3.3. In the future, the goal is to reach 3.5 and further get to like 5% of Taiwan's GDP. So these are all real progress. At the end of the day, it hinges on in how Washington see you. If Washington doesn't see you as paying enough effort, then that still remains a problem.
How about you, Adam? How do you look at this in terms of the three problems or three potential gaps that Taiwan still need to work on? Which one do you find to be the most urgent issue and why?
I think it is very difficult to make a priority of these 3 points because I think the situation is all very serious. But for me, I think the most serious problem is the recruitment. Because in the other point, you can increase your budget, maybe you can bring some changes on the topic, on those points. But only this one, because we have a super low fatality rate. So that is a very big problem. Just like our school, the university cannot have so many students. That is the same problem. So the troops cannot enough soldiers. That is the same. Even in the future, we can buy more and more weapons. But if we don't have soldiers to use it, that doesn't make any sense to engage in the future, the fight is. So for me, I think that recruitment is a very important or the most serious, most urgent issue that we have to face it. And I think maybe extend the compulsory service is the one way for Taiwan to do, because we cannot hire so many soldiers that just by recruit. So we maybe some part of that is to ask the citizen to have the duty to do this. Maybe it's the only one way, but I know it may make the people very unhappy.
Right, that's definitely going to be a challenging political program to push through. But that note about, I guess, low birth rate being a potential national security concern for Taiwan, but perhaps not just for Taiwan as well, for many other societies around the world. Actually, Ed, I might follow up with you on this, because the report also talks about the more domestic politics part of the equation. It says that a divide between the ruling DPP and the opposition, which controls the legislature, this kind of domestic gridlock is becoming a bit of a defense readiness concern for Washington. So with this kind of external signal, let's say, maybe some would say external pressure from Washington on Taiwan's political gridlock, do you see that being a positive in terms of helping Taiwan's political parties to overcome their partisanship, or is it actually making them harden their divide even more?
Maybe no, because the diversity in Taiwan is always exists. So I think in Taiwan we have a different opinion. Sometimes they even for the defense issue, sometimes they even for the weapon selling issue. I think they may have the different approach to pursue. So maybe U.S. just try to ask us to follow that policy because they just to enhance the first island chance ability, yes. And our government work very hard to do what the U.S. want to do, but it still cannot to just ease all the diversity in Taiwan. So no matter the parties or who ruling the government, we may face the same problem or same situations. Yeah, but we still try very hard to overcome all the problems.
Indeed. And how do you see this, Ronan?
Basically, it's a reflection of the polarization issue, a lingering, polarization issue here in Taiwan. So, and I just want to make a suggestion to both parties that they should discipline the debate. So the debate basically should be about, in principle, everybody will be on the same page in terms of Taiwan should do more rather than do less. But they can basically argue, against each other in terms of the details.
Right.
How to actually allocate the resources to buy what. But in principle, everybody should be on the same page that Taiwan should contribute more. Taiwan should spend more on its defense. Yeah.
Let me take our attention to the more economic side of the story here on U.S.-Taiwan relations. So another major issue in Taiwan-U.S. relations is that earlier this year, the U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on advanced AI chips, but Taiwan is still waiting for the decision that could matter far more, namely whether broader tariffs will be applied to Taiwan's core semiconductor exports. That decision may come soon, as the U.S. Commerce Department must deliver a semiconductor market report to President Trump by July 3rd, just 2 weeks away. Now, here's what Taiwan's Vice Premier Zheng Lijing said about it this week.
我们也向美方提出来，我们希望，如果美方要提出232半导体关税，我们希望能够先行完成对赴美投资企业零关税配额以及豁免清单的协商，而在这一项的沟通工作当中，政府会做企业的后盾，持续跟美国来进一步的沟通，那以免我国的企业受到半导体232关税的影响。所以当然我们希望这个关税越晚越好，不过我们也已经预先取得了优惠待遇。
That was Taiwan's Vice Premier Zheng Lijing. Now, it should be noted that Taiwan has committed hundreds of billions of dollars in the U.S. investment. TSMC alone has pledged over $150 billion to build chip factories in the U.S. state of Arizona. Now, Roland, let me come to you. All these Taiwanese pledges and commitment of investment in the U.S. to help bring manufacturing back to the U.S. This kind of shows of goodwill gesture from Taiwan side. Do you see it as buying more durable protection from the U.S., or do you see it as potentially only whetting the administration appetite for even more?
You can have, sometimes it's both. So let me actually elaborate. The investment basically just buy access, but it doesn't, buy you a guarantee. It buys you the access to talk to the administration, to let them know what's going on the ground, and to make them feel like you should be deemed important. But that's all. That doesn't ensure a security guarantee. So that's the reason why, the deeper problem, as I said, is that every concession Taiwan has made basically just sometimes just reset the baseline for the next debate. So that's the inconvenient truth that we have to deal with. But you also have to acknowledge that this is how a transactional relationship works. If you're dealing with a transactional type of president, this is how you actually secure your survival. You may hate it. You may basically not a big fan of this, diplomatic negotiation or communication, but you have to face it. So I would say that this is what Taiwan has to continue doing. Even if we feel uncomfortable, we still have to put it off and try to make the impossible happen. And I also want to say that a credit to the Vice Premier Zheng Lijing. Basically, right now, if they are going to increase the cost, TSMC can try to accommodate, but that comes with a margin. There's also a limit, right? So at the end of the day, the smarter move is actually to trying to make those exemptions happen for TSMC. Trying to continue talking to important people, making them aware of the fact that TSMC is very important. It's part of American national interest.
All right, that's a note on pragmatism. Adam, how do you look at this? How Taiwan goes on managing its semiconductor and economic relations with the U.S.?
Yeah, it's a very big issue. I mean, U.S. must push Taiwan more and more. I think that is a direction of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump just announced in G7 they may pursue 50% manufacture in U.S. of chips and wafers. So I think if Donald Trump said let's go, he must do this very hard. So in the future, Donald Trump may still keep the pressure to Taiwan, TSMC. But I think what we call the silicon shield is not based on the supply chain, but also is based on the yield rate. We need to make the chips, not only we can make it, but also we can keep the price low and the quality high. But I think in all this world, only Taiwan has at least not the technology, but I think it's a kind of personality of Taiwan. So it cannot be replaced by other countries for me. It's not only to send the supply chain to another country, you can make it. So if we can keep this advantage, we can keep the silicon shield in the future for me.
All right, thank you, Adam, for that note about the importance of political part of the Taiwan-U.S. relations story. Let's unpack this a little bit more. Now, last week, members of the U.S. Congressional Black Caucus visited Taipei, one of the latest in a long line of congressional delegations that have made a trip to Taiwan. Congressional visits like this have become a regular feature of U.S.-Taiwan relations, which are a visible sign that bipartisan support for Taiwan on Capitol Hill remains real and robust, even as the executive branch sends sometimes mixed signals. But is that picture about to change, though? Several of the lawmakers who have been most active on Taiwan will not be returning to U.S. Congress after November's midterm elections. For example, U.S. Representative Michael McCaul is retiring after more than 2 decades. As chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, he led the first congressional delegation to meet Taiwan's President Lai after his inauguration, and China sanctioned him personally in response. There's also U.S. Senator Jian Shaheen, the senior Democrat senator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who is stepping down as well. Just last month, after Trump's Beijing summit, she co-led a bipartisan resolution declaring America's support for Taiwan is non-negotiable. Lastly, Senator John Cornyn, co-author of the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act, also lost his Republican primary recently. These are some of the people who built the legislative architecture for Taiwan support over the past decade, and they are leaving in the same election cycle. Roland, let me come back to you for my next question, which is simply that this bipartisan congressional support for Taiwan, how likely do you see that you will last beyond after this personal reshuffle after the U.S. Elections midterm?
Yeah, so my assessment is that the support survives, but its intensity drops, at least momentarily, after the retirement of those important people. To see why, you have to really separate 2 different layers. The first layer is institutional. So you have the TRA, the Taiwan's Relations Act, you have the 6th Assurance, and the congressional caucuses. They don't die. They were still there even after retirement of those people. So institution remains. But the second layer is the champions. Those are the people who actually put the bill on calendar to debate with their colleagues, to make a case, make a strong case for Taiwan. Those people, they will retire.
Right.
They may fade away, but my prediction is that new champions will emerge. So my assessment is that in the short run, you probably are going to see some momentum lost. But the support will be there. Just the difference is the intensity. So, but once the new champions emerge, and they are they are inserted into important position, then you are going to see with the institution already there, and the new champions working in tandem, the support for Taiwan will remain very robust.
Right. So important note there, the institution out there, the champions, it may take a little bit of time to build a next generation with the same kind of street cred.
That's right.
To do the job. What's your take, Adam, on, again, U.S. congressional support for Taiwan?
I think if you go back to see the process of per Taiwan bill passed, we can find that almost everybody to vote yes, right? If you remember, like Taipei Act or Taiwan Solid International Solid Act, and so on, you can find that every time the pre-Taiwan bill passed, it's with all 4 members of Congress. So I think that is the past dependence for U.S. Congress. They will follow the rule. But for me, we can still do something for this. And sometimes we can show them the value of Taiwan. It's not only based on economy issue, but also democracy issue is very important for us because we have a super value for U.S. because after World War II, Taiwan is the very successful example for this world as a model of democratic politics. So I think we still need to do something to tell this world how value Taiwan is and make friends with U.S. Congress always.
Indeed. And Ronan, what's your take on this? Taiwan obviously has no vote in this midterm election in the U.S. side, but what do you think are some of the things Taiwan can or should do in the interim to consolidate that support, no matter what happens after the election?
Yeah, so number one, to continue to build ties with the next generation of the congressmen, right? So these are important. That it could potentially be the new champions, right? So the new leaders. So number one, and so I would just make one further point. So Taiwan should make it critical, extremely clear, crystal clear that we, everybody in this island, are willing to defend our country, so that basically we can debate over a lot of different issues. We can debate the principle, basically the details, but we don't debate the principles. The principle is that everybody is part of this island, this country. So we're going to put every effort to make our country even more secure and safer. Yeah, so that's a message that Taiwan should send to the outside world and the U.S. in particular.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Important pillars of message discipline for Taiwan, the sense of solidarity and commitment.
That's right.
On that note, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ronan, for coming to the show and share your expertise and insight today.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, that's our show. Thank you for tuning in. Please come check us out on YouTube. And until next time, it's good night from us from Taiwan.